you're in a relationship that doesn't feel good to you, but yet you wake up every morning and you do your best to put on a show to preserve that relationship. So you tell your partner certain things, you deprive yourself of your own needs, you say things that are in contradiction to your truth in order to just keep that going. So what are we actually doing at the end of the day? We are lying to ourselves, keeping ourselves in the dark in order to maintain some external reality that we think is going to suit us. But does it really? Usually that ends up resulting in anxiety, in depression, in suppressed feelings, in personal mistrust, and in quieting our inner voice because we don't believe that it deserves to be heard.
When we're in such dramatic contrast to our higher self's awareness and our own personal truth, that the system goes.
Anxiety is telling us that we need to pay attention to ourselves. And yet we see it and we try to silence it even more. We think of anxiety as something that we need to just run away from. But similar to pain, it's a reality that means you need to listen more to yourself. A lot of people approach pain in that way too. They think that if I'm in pain, I need to try to shut those feelings down and try to do something to run away from myself, when in truth, it's the exact opposite thing. It's your self-consciousness of your internal system begging you for attention, wanting recognition, wanting you to actually go within and accept those feelings and somatic experiences. But what do we often do? We just keep going into the world and try to distract ourselves. We want to try the next thing to run away from our own truth and everything we know to be real for us deep down. That's the most degrading thing we can do.
Well, the last time it happened, I basically responded within, it probably was discomfort for like 30 or 40 minutes. And then I ended up sending a message being like, I'm having like a somatic experience. My body's freaking out. I know it's not, I said, it doesn't feel like mine. I don't know is something going on? Is there information in the field coming to me that is not yet in my conscious awareness that lands in the subconscious or in the energy body that tells me something that is not yet arrived up here in the brain?
Well, really, they're all entangled, right? Your soul, your heart's consciousness, your higher self, that knowing that's in the field. Basically, you know who you are at your core. You could feel that by connecting to your heart, by just being with yourself, feeling that information, but it's also something that is in the field. Because you could say that in the holographic field around us, there exists really a true version of us, the soul that is non-local. So you could be picking up that information as you're entangling with your higher self. That's coming through intuition, through subtle cues, which a lot of people wonder what's the difference between then fear and intuition. If intuition can come in the form of fear when we feel like we're out of alignment with our higher self. So that's something to really look for too, because fear in the mind is usually the opposite of intuition. But something that feels like fear, because when you're in your heart, you feel out of alignment with something you're dealing with externally, could be the intuitive cue you need to go back within and connect to that source of truth, which is either internal or you could say external, but not relating to the people around you that are, trying to get you out of alignment. So this is really a question of whether or not we want to come back home and know who we are and do what's right for us, to connect with that frequency of just pure integrity and truth.
This seems like the answer for everybody would be yes, right? I feel like everyone would say, I want to know the truth. I mean, I don't think everyone's prepared to deal with what that means, but I think everyone would. So what blocks that? Like, what is it that doesn't allow someone to step into a deeper knowing and sense of truth and sense of self?
It would be the harsh reality that everything that you're experiencing now is due to you depriving yourself of that truth. Once you step into the truth, you have to be accepting of everything that you've done that is in opposition to it. And so we go into this cognitive dissonance state. We go into the state that we have to now be responsible for everything in our reality that we dislike. And we have to take ownership over these parts of us that we've kept in the dark and we've denied our truth, which turns into our shadow, and it turns into the repression of all the emotions that really are deep down telling us what our personal truth is saying. And so externally speaking, when it comes to things happening in the world, which we often, turn our attention away from, the same thing holds true. We don't want to see the reality because that would mean accepting everything that is also teaching us the deeper lessons about ourselves. And we don't want to harmonize because that means having to reconcile the parts of us that we have not seen, we have not understood. And so this is what, makes people go into these repeating cycles of constantly manifesting the same situations, dealing with the expression of their shadow because they're all the time just trying to deprive themselves of that truth. And it's easier for people to sort of live a lie than to look in the mirror and to figure out What is it that's causing the expression of these things that I dislike? But then that means not trying to run away from them anymore. So to truly embody the truth means having to meet everything that you've been wanting to suppress. It's wanting to see everything in your reality as an expression of you, which could be the most difficult part, because we want to say that, certain things we're not responsible for. Some things are just, part of suffering and the universe's test for us. But it's a matter of how do we respond to that? And do we want to respond truthfully or keep ourselves in this loop of just believing that the universe is working against us?
Because truthfully might mean the end of a relationship, the end of a friendship, the end of a job, the end of where you live, the end of how you go about your life, certain habits and hobbies you have. And, as I say so often, and had to say it to myself in the past, is that your new life is going to cost you your old one.
Exactly.
And that's a hard thing for people to. And I think there's a deep attachment that people have to. I can feel it in the energy of like Joe Dispenza's book title, like Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, but in this sort of changing of personality or like becoming someone different. It's like there's a real loyalty to the persona that someone has created for themselves that they don't want to abandon. There's like a certain, they feel like that's the wrong thing, that's not somebody loving them just the way they are, or they feel like it is somehow just not, that it's an abandoning of the personality.
Mm-hmm. Right. It's a coping mechanism, really. It's a defense mechanism.
Oh, it's kind of like during the ego story they tell you to go like, oh no, this is who you are.
Right. Which is the most pervasive image of who we are. We start to have a love affair with this ego because we think that it's what we need to sustain our sense of self. Because what's true deep down, if we keep going deeper and deeper past those layers of falsity and, self-image, things that we fabricate in order to believe that that is who we are, is a totally fluid essence. At the core of it is no essence at all. I mean, everything is just pure energy, pure potentiality, pure consciousness. So when it comes down to that infinite potential of ourselves, we want to fragment it. We want to bring it into some kind of constructs that we believe make us more relatable, more appreciable, more loved. All the while, this is something that we developed when we were still so young that we didn't have a sense of identity. And so we learned to take these mental constructs and turn them into ego constructs. And you're so right. Like personality is something that could be completely fluid, except we don't want that to be because we think that it's unsafe to go into the world in a fluid way.
Is there anything inherent, or is this whole thing transitory and we can shift and transcend it into something completely different called the human experience?
Right. The inherent nature of it is that we were born into a third dimensional construct where we believe that we need to be submitting to this construct. And so when we get into the spiritual sense of, wanting to transcend, wanting to enlighten, wanting to become the fifth dimensional consciousness, we can come into an awareness of what it means to live outside of the box, outside of the matrix game, which means learning to see outside of the program. But to transcend that isn't necessarily to not exist within it. So for as long as we're here, we're existing within the matrix, right? Within the third dimensional reality. So what our consciousness knows is that there's constantly these boundaries that we're up against. We're up against boundaries of time, which our mind can recognize, but we know that time is also transcendental in nature. But we have to learn how to work with those constructs, just like we have to learn to integrate duality. Duality is a construct within the third dimensional consciousness. We know that everything has a plus and minus, positive, negative charge, right? That's not something that we can transcend. If we know love, we're also going to know pain. If we know sadness, we're also going to know happiness. We have to learn to experience and love that balance. So that's inherent to us. But there is something very pervasive to being within the matrix and wanting to conform to it. That is what the collective mind tends to do. People tend to be as one with the herd. They want to do the same thing that everybody else does. There's this mentality that, we need to believe what everyone else believes. And so it's very difficult to learn how to transcend when we look around, everyone's doing a certain thing. And we can see this collective consciousness playing into all historic trends, everything from, fashion to food to the latest diet to exercise trends. People are constantly playing into some trend created by someone who wants us to think and feel in a certain way. And when we don't doubt that, we're always going to be doing what everyone else does in the Matrix, playing a game, fulfilling some role, and not really knowing who we are because we're just adapting to the concept of life within the Matrix. When we start to recognize that this is the Matrix game, and we're a unique individual that really exists outside of the Matrix, we were born to come into here to recognize that this is what's happening, but really all the world is stage. For us to recognize who we are and learn what role do we really want to embody. Is it this person who is just operating by a script written by somebody else? Or perhaps are we someone who can recognize this game for what it is and learn to operate outside of it? So when we do that, when we step into that mentality of true awareness and awakening, then there becomes a reality where we exist outside of the Matrix. And all of these disorders and different issues that people are dealing with are really just aspects of you not knowing that you don't have to conform to the Matrix, which means you don't have to conform to your past. You don't have to conform to what your mind tells you you are. You don't have to look to the media and believe everything that you are told. You can really start to believe that you are a free, sovereign being governed by the Universal One. And you can take that consciousness into a completely new experience and just start to play with it. And existing in that reality where you are the mind, you're as one with the cosmic mind, and a higher intelligence brings you this truth that really there is no attachment other than what you decide to attach yourself to. And that's a game changer, because then we can operate with love, with freedom, with virtue and dignity, and really know that we are the creator of this experience, so why not make it the most fluid, harmonious experience that we can?
If you like this clip and you want to hear the whole episode, click at the bottom of your screen.